At our housewarming party, my mill announced, half this $2.4 million house belongs to me. It's our family tradition. I calmly showed her the mortgage papers. Actually, the house is from my family. Her face dropped when she realized who really owned it. I should have known something was wrong when my mother-in-law, Victoria Pierce, insisted on helping plan our housewarming party. It's tradition, she'd said, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her iPad as she scrolled through catering options. The mother of the son always organizes these things in our family. I'm Sophia Martinez, 32, and 6 months ago, I married her son James. According to Victoria, it was the social event of the season, though she'd fought me on everything from my choice of dress to the venue. Now, as we prepared to move into our new home, she was at it again. Darling, she'd drawl, her Boston Brahmin accent thick with false concern. Are you sure about that neighborhood? It's so nouveau riche. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd grown up just 3 streets over from our new house. The daughter of the property developer who'd transformed this once modest suburb into one of the most sought-after neighborhoods in the city. My father, Antonio Martinez, had taught me everything about real estate from the ground up. Mija, he'd say, understand the bones of a house before you look at its skin. By 15, I could read blueprints better than most contractors. By 25, I'd completed my first development project. Now, at 32, I ran my own successful real estate development company, though I kept that quiet from James's family. They knew I worked in real estate, but assumed I was just another agent showing houses to make commission. James knew the truth, of course, but he enjoyed letting his family maintain their assumptions. Let them think what they want, he'd say, kissing my cheek. You don't have anything to prove to them. But standing in our new kitchen, watching Victoria direct the catering staff for our housewarming party, I wondered if maybe it was time to set the record straight. The dining room centerpieces should be taller, she commanded. This is a Pierce family home. Everything must be perfect. I bit my tongue, remembering how I'd personally designed this kitchen, working with the architects to ensure every detail was exactly right. The marble countertops had been sourced from the same quarry my father had used for his first luxury development. The custom cabinets were handcrafted by the artisan who'd been working with my family for 20 years. Victoria, I said carefully, I think the centerpieces are fine as they are. She turned to me with that condescending smile I'd grown so familiar with. Oh, sweetie, you'll understand these things once you've been part of the family longer. The Pierce name carries certain expectations. The doorbell rang before I could respond. It was the first of our guests, James's father, Richard, arrived early as usual. Despite their divorce 10 years ago, Victoria still seemed to defer to his opinion on all things related to family tradition. Richard, she cooed, air kissing his cheeks, don't you think the centerpieces should be taller? This is a Pierce family home, after all. I watched my father-in-law survey the room, his eyes lingering on the expensive finishes and custom details. Beautiful home, he mused. Though I'm surprised James could afford something like this so soon in his career. Well, Daddy, Victoria simpered, you know how important it is to maintain certain standards. I assume they must have used his trust fund for the down payment. James walked in just then, catching my eye with a knowing smile. He'd heard the comment about his trust fund, the one that didn't actually exist. As a pediatric surgeon, he made a good living, but we both knew who had really financed this house. Mom, Dad, he said, kissing Victoria's cheek and shaking Richard's hand. The guests will be arriving soon. Shouldn't we get ready? More people began filtering in, James's colleagues from the hospital, my friends from the real estate world, carefully introduced as acquaintances from the neighborhood, and various members of the Pierce family clan. Victoria held court in the living room, acting every bit the gracious hostess in someone else's home. I was in the kitchen, checking on the catering staff, when I overheard her talking to James's Aunt Eleanor. Of course, the house will be properly transferred according to family tradition, Victoria was saying. Half to the mother of the son. It's how we've done things for generations. Can't have outsiders controlling Pierce family property, after all. I froze, nearly dropping the wine glass I was holding. Was she serious? Did she actually believe she had some claim to our home? Have you told Sophia about the tradition? Eleanor asked. Oh, there's no need yet, Victoria replied. These things are handled between family. Real Pierce family. I felt a hand on my shoulder and turned to find my father standing there. I hadn't expected him to come. He usually avoided social gatherings, preferring to stay in his office reviewing plans and making deals. Mija, he said quietly in Spanish, I think it's time we showed them the papers, don't you? I looked at my father, this man who'd taught me everything I knew about business and property development, who'd encouraged me to keep my success quiet until the right moment. He was right, it was time. Not yet, Papa, I whispered back. Let's wait until Victoria makes her big announcement. You know she won't be able to resist doing it publicly. He chuckled, understanding exactly what I meant. Victoria Pierce had never been able to resist a dramatic moment, especially one that she thought would assert her authority. As if on cue, Victoria clinked her glass, gathering everyone's attention. The moment I'd been waiting for was about to arrive, and with it, a truth that would shake the Pierce family's assumptions to their core. Little did Victoria know, but her grand announcement about family tradition was about to backfire spectacularly. Because while she'd been planning how to claim half our home, she'd overlooked one crucial detail. Who really owned it in the first place? I caught James's eye across the room, and he gave me a subtle nod. We'd discussed this moment, planned for it even. Now it was time to show Victoria Pierce exactly what kind of woman her son had married, and exactly whose family tradition really mattered in this $2.4 million house. Victoria stood in the center of our living room, champagne glass raised, the perfect picture of old money elegance in her designer dress and family pearls. The afternoon sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, my design choice, not hers, cast a warm glow around her as she prepared to make her announcement. Friends, family, honored guests, she began, her voice carrying that practiced tone of casual authority. Welcome to the newest Pierce family home. As many of you know, our family has certain traditions when it comes to property. I moved to stand beside James, slipping my hand into his. He squeezed it reassuringly, fighting back a smile. My father positioned himself near the doorway, watching with the patient attention of a man who'd orchestrated countless real estate deals. For generations, Victoria continued, the Pierce family has ensured that our properties remain within proper family control. When a son marries, it's tradition that his mother maintains partial ownership of any family home. She smiled beatifically around the room. It's how we've preserved our family's legacy for over a century. Murmurs rippled through the gathered guests. I could see James's cousins nodding knowingly. Apparently, this tradition had been exercised before. Therefore, Victoria's voice rose slightly, I'm delighted to announce that as of today, I'll be taking my rightful position as half-owner of this beautiful property. The paperwork has already been drawn up by our family lawyer. She gestured to a tall, gray-haired man in the corner who looked distinctly uncomfortable. I recognized him, Harold Matthews, who'd handled Pierce family legal matters for decades. What Victoria didn't know was that he'd also reviewed the actual property documents for this house just last week. After all, Victoria added, with a pointed look in my direction, we must ensure that Pierce family homes remain under proper supervision. The implied slight was clear. I wasn't proper, enough to be trusted with full ownership of such a prestigious property. James's hand tightened on mine, but I gave him a subtle shake of my head. Not yet. Victoria, I said sweetly, stepping forward. That's such an interesting tradition. But before you continue, perhaps we should review the actual property documents. Her smile flickered slightly. Oh, darling, there's no need for that. Harold has everything prepared. Actually, Mrs. Pierce, Harold spoke up, clearing his throat, I think you might want a dash. Harold, Victoria cut him off. Please show everyone the ownership transfer papers. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. I don't have those papers, Mrs. Pierce. Because they don't exist, I finished for him, walking to my home office. But I do have something else to show everyone. I returned with a thick folder, bound in leather with the Martinez Development Group logo embossed in gold. My father stepped forward, standing beside me as I opened it. "Victoria," I said clearly, "I'd like to introduce you to someone properly. This is my father, Antonio Martinez, founder and CEO of Martinez Development Group." I paused, letting that sink in. The company that developed this entire neighborhood 20 years ago. Victoria's perfectly composed face began to show cracks of confusion. "I don't understand what that has to do with Dash." "Everything," I continued smoothly. "You see, this house wasn't built by the Pierce family. It was designed and built by Martinez Development Group. Specifically, it was designed by me." I pulled out the blueprints, my signature clearly visible on every page. "I'm not just a real estate agent, Victoria. I'm the CEO of Martinez Development Group's residential division. This house, it's not a Pierce family property. It's a Martinez family creation." The room had gone completely silent. I could see Richard Pierce's face reddening as he began to understand the implications. Victoria's champagne glass trembled slightly in her hand. But James," she stammered, "had nothing to do with purchasing this house." I finished for her. "The mortgage, the down payment, the entire property, it's all in my name. Through my company." I laid out the property documents one by one. "You see, Victoria, while you were planning how to claim half of this house, you never bothered to ask who actually owned it. You just assumed, because I married your son, that this must be a Pierce family property." James stepped forward then, placing his hand on my shoulder. "Mother, Sophia isn't just my wife. She's one of the most successful real estate developers in the city. This house isn't a Pierce family home. It's a Martinez family project." Victoria's face had gone from confused to pale to slightly green. But I wasn't finished yet. There was one more document in my folder, one that would drive the final nail into her assumptions. "And since you're so interested in family traditions," I said, pulling out the last paper, "you might want to see this." The document I held was the master plan for the entire neighborhood. The original vision my father had created 2 decades ago. But it was the addendum, dated just last month, that made Victoria's face turn an even paler shade of white. "This is the development plan for the next phase of the neighborhood," I explained, spreading the papers on our dining room table, right next to those centerpieces Victoria had been so concerned about. "Martinez Development Group is building 10 new luxury homes, all designed by me personally." I pointed to a particular lot on the plan. "This one might interest you, Victoria. It's your current address, isn't it?" She nodded mutely, her usual composure completely shattered. "The entire block has been acquired for redevelopment," I continued. "All current residents were notified last month about the upcoming changes. Didn't you read the letter from Martinez Development Group?" Victoria's hand flew to her throat, clutching her pearls. "That letter? I thought it was just some local construction notice." "It was a formal notification that your lease wouldn't be renewed," I corrected her. "You see, Victoria, while you've been busy planning how to claim half of my house, you've been renting your home from my company for the past 15 years. The revelation hit the room like a thunderbolt. Victoria Pierce, who'd spent years presenting herself as old money aristocracy, had been a tenant in a Martinez development property all along. But our family lawyer handled the property purchase," she protested weakly. Harold stepped forward, looking apologetic. "Actually, Mrs. Pierce, you only purchased the right to lease the property. The land itself has always belonged to Martinez Development Group. I tried to explain this when you called about the tradition of property ownership." James's father, Richard, who'd been unusually quiet, suddenly burst out laughing. "Oh, this is perfect," he chuckled. "All these years of you lording your family estate over everyone, Victoria, and you've been renting from our daughter-in-law's company." Victoria sank into the nearest chair, her perfect posture finally failing her. "I don't understand. How did I not know?" My father spoke up for the first time, his accent thick with amusement. "Perhaps, Senora, you were too busy looking at the name Pierce to notice the name Martinez on all your property documents?" I held up one final paper, a new lease agreement. However, Victoria, I'm willing to offer you a new arrangement. Martinez Development Group is happy to provide you with a residence in one of our new properties. I paused, allowing myself a small smile. Under certain conditions, of course. Conditions, she whispered. First, this family tradition of claiming ownership of your children's homes ends now. Second, you'll need to acknowledge publicly that your claims about Pierce family property ownership were incorrect. James stepped forward, adding his own condition. And Mother, you'll need to start treating Sophia with the respect she deserves, not just as your daughter-in-law, but as the successful businesswoman she is. Victoria looked around the room, at the faces of guests who'd witnessed her humiliation, at her son standing proudly beside his wife, at the father of her children laughing at her pretensions, and finally at me, the woman she'd underestimated so completely. I accept your terms, she said quietly. The party resumed slowly, with guests breaking into small groups to discuss the dramatic revelation they'd just witnessed. I overheard more than a few people marveling at how they'd never suspected my true role in the business world. Later that evening, after the last guest had left, James and I stood in our kitchen. The kitchen I'd designed, in the house I'd built, in the neighborhood my family had created. You know, James said, pulling me close, I think this might be the first time in history anyone has actually rendered my mother speechless. I laughed, leaning into his embrace. Do you think she'll honor the conditions? After today? I think she's learned her lesson about underestimating you. My father, who'd stayed to help clean up, joined us with a glass of wine. Mija, he said proudly, you handled that exactly as I taught you. Wait for the right moment, then show all your cards at once. I learned from the best, Papa, I smiled. The next morning, we received a formal letter from Victoria, apologizing for her presumptuous behavior and acknowledging her mistake about the property ownership. She even requested a meeting to discuss the designs for the new development. Since, she wrote, I'll need to find a new place to live anyway. James read the letter over my shoulder as I worked on blueprints for the new houses. You're not really going to evict her, are you? He asked. Of course not, I assured him. But she doesn't need to know that just yet. Sometimes people need to understand what they could lose before they appreciate what they have. As I returned to my work, I thought about Victoria's precious family traditions. The Pierce family might have their way of doing things, but the Martinez family had traditions too. Traditions of hard work, of earning success, and of standing up for ourselves when needed. And as for our new house? It stood as a testament to both families now. Built by a Martinez, loved by a Pierce, and owned free and clear by a woman who'd learned to bridge both worlds while staying true to herself. Victoria never again mentioned family traditions regarding property ownership. In fact, she became one of my biggest advocates, proudly telling anyone who would listen about her brilliant daughter-in-law, the real estate developer. Though she did still insist on handling the centerpieces at all family gatherings, some traditions, it seems, die harder than others.